Hello everybody, how are you doing? I'm hanging in there. Let's look at this spell that I made. I wanted to show off. I've made a little test room here so we can do a couple examples. We'll leave the grid lines off for now. So this is a configurable tunneling spell. It only works in the 4 directions, but it does not work up and down, unfortunately. So the way it works is you select your marker spell. There's 2 separate spells. You select the marker spell, you click the top right with the right mouse button, and then you hold down shift and click the left or click the right mouse button while holding down shift. And you can tell you got the correct markers because you get a block on the top right and a light on the bottom left. And then you switch to your dig spell and right click, and so the dig spell has to be on a loop cast, whereas the marker spell is a regular spell bullet. And it goes to town. It does 2 blocks at a time, which makes it a little bit speedier. I'll show you, you can configure it to go only 1 block at a time, which helps with mana, which if you were using, I don't know if this spell would work on a smaller CAD or not, but if it did, you'd probably want to use the 1 at a time. So to stop the spell, you just move off from your CAD, and you're good to go. So let me do another size here. We'll do a real small one. Let's do 2 by 2 and dig. So this can really get some depth quickly, and we'll start a large one. But first, I wanted to show you a couple of spells I use in spells and items that I use in conjunction with this. So I've got a dank null, which helps soak up some of my items. These are ones I was playing with, but for the most part, this helps grab lots of the garbage blocks to prevent you from overloading your inventory. This is a undiscovered mod pack, which we've been really enjoying for the past few weeks. For those wondering what pack this is, I also use the Ring of Greater Magnetization, and it really helps when you're digging out a large area to not have blocks scattering everywhere. Alright, so let's see. Yeah, let's try, well, before I do that, so you can't go super big, because what happens is Psi has a limit of 32 blocks, I believe it is, from the player. So we'll start this, and we'll see. This should run fine. And it'll take a little while, but it'll run. You'll notice I get a little clump of mana right at the beginning, but then it kind of stabilizes. And it does slowly go down, but it takes quite a while. So if I get too far away, you'll see I start getting errors. There we go. So I was outside of the block radius, and it just stops. That's that little chunk right there. As soon as I get back in radius, it'll start going again. So that would prevent you from doing a super large area. Also, since this spell does eventually use power, using the 2 at a time, you will eventually die from this, so you have to kind of watch it. But it is pretty good for AFK. So here, before I get too far, let me show you how I would AFK. So I've got another spell that I found online called Sanctuary, and what it does, I get pretty close. Well, first you mark, so I've got to remark because I did this, so let's dig these out. And we'll mark. I'll mark down here. And then you do have to click on the block face that you want to dig into. So if this block, had not been there, and I clicked on this side, it would mess it up. You have to click on the block face, and they do have to be even with each other. You can't have, can't do that one up there and then have this one, out here. It has to be on a plane. Alright, so I've marked it, so now I'm going to switch to my cage, and you stand in the middle of a block and you cast this, and it puts invisible blocks around you, and that helps prevent you from getting lava spilled on you and whatnot. So now I'm going to switch to my dig spell and let it go, and you notice the blocks still kind of come to me, so I don't get too many wasted blocks. You probably could collect them with item collector or something as well, and pump them into your sorting system. So this is a good way to AFK. So while that's going, let's look at how the spells work. So I've got two images here, not those, and I've got the dig and the marker spell, and I've colored them off so that you can see more details about how they work. So let's zoom in just a little bit. Alright, so this is the dig spell. I'm going to break it down real simply. The way it works is this section right here, I'm going to work this backwards. This section right here is the actual dig command. And to reduce it from 2 blocks at a time, you just change this number down to 1, and then you have to change this number down to 1 as well, which we'll look at this in a minute. This is the depth calculation. So if you change both of those to 1, it'll lower the cost and only dig 1 at a time. Alright, so there's 3 variables that are carried from the marker spell into the dig spell. And the first one is the position, which is this one right here. Then there's the direction, which is this one right here, which goes into the dig so that it knows which direction to dig the 2 blocks into. And then the third one is the width and height, and it's pulled in here and as well down here. And I only use the X and Y values of it, and so those, I'm sorry, my children are yelling. So that I have X and Y coordinates are the only parts of the vector that I use, and so that allows me to carry 2 variables within 1 vector. So alright, so this is the height calculation, this is the width calculation right here, and this is the depth calculation. And these 3 sections are combined right here with the vector sum, and then they're fed into the original position that the spell was started from, and then those are fed into the dig spell itself. Alright, so let's switch over and look at the marker spell. So the marker spell is actually more complicated, and the way it works is up here is the main logic for determining the location that the click happened at, and the 3 variables that carry over are the position, the initial position, which is stored right here. There's the direction, which is go ahead and find the normal and invert it, which gives you the inward direction. Since the click face, if I click on a block here, let's see, I've got lava pouring towards me. If I click on a block, the vector it gives is actually the vector coming out of the block and not into the block. So I actually need the normal of that. And you notice I've still got half mana here, and I've dug quite a bit from where I started. So let's go back to marker. Alright, so there's the normal, and I store that in the second variable. So then this segment right here is the blocks. So here's the light when you hold down shift and click on the bottom left. That's the light, and then here's where it breaks it and puts the block in its place for the top right. And here's the die trick, which prevents the rest of this code from running when you're holding shift. And so that's what happens, is this top part is what runs when you hold down shift and click on the bottom left, and the rest of this, the whole thing, the entire spell runs when you click on the top right. So the final section here, and here is the save for the 4th variable, and this is why you need the larger CAD. So let's look at this real quick. This is the CAD socket you need. This one won't work, even though it seems more powerful because of the bandwidth is higher. The sockets number there is very important because that determines how many variables you can use. And this one allows you to use 1 extra variable, which is needed for this spell. So the 4th variable basically carries the initial starting vector from the first cast, which is the top right, to the second cast, which is the bottom left. And that number is then pulled in right here and used it's used to calculate the distance so that we can calculate the width and height. And that happens by basically we separate out the X, Y, and Z portions. Well, we take the difference of the top right and the bottom left, and we separate out the X, Y, and Z We combine the X and Z because we don't know which direction they're facing, and so we combine those and then we normalize it, and that gives us you know, whether or not we're facing an X or Z direction. It'll work both ways, and then we combine that with the Y vector, and that gives us the width plus width times height, which is what the dig spell expects, and then this just carries forward, and that's our width. So those are the 3 variables that are carried forward to the dig spell, and I think that's all I had for how this works. So as you notice, I've got a pile of loot standing here. I've got a mess of lava and water, but you notice I stayed safe through all this, and I've still got my spell still going. It's still digging away, and yeah, it's really nice. It's especially nice that it's configurable. I initially made this spell for a I'm gonna stop that. I initially made this spell to, this is easy to clean up, you just smack those blocks. So I initially made this so that I could make a tunneling spell. Let's just look down here. This is my main tunneling shaft, and so I make these little inlets like this, and drill them away. This is a big section that I dug out while I was testing the spell. But things like this are really good for finding ores, and you can put them 2 or 3 blocks apart and find lots and lots of ores. And I was digging these manually with regular picks and stuff, and it gets really time consuming. But with this, you can mark off, like here's another one I did. So here I can mark off, go from here to down here and let it go. And very quickly I'm able to mine out a large area, and I can get up real high where I normally wouldn't click, and that can gain me some more ores. And also, usually I'll stop to regen mana, and while that's happening, I'll pick up some of these side ores that I find on the ground or the sides in between, and put down lights so that monsters don't start spawning. Alright, so yeah, that's basically the spell in a nutshell. Thanks for watching.